Scott Grayson was inside the locker room last night, and he joins us now on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline for another edition of Grayson's Grades. Scott, what's going on, man?
Hey, how's it going, Mike? Kind of a boring day, right?
Ooh, yes. So give us first, before we dive into the grades and the report card here, you were in the locker room last night. Now, you've been in the locker room home, road, good losses, bad losses, ugly losses, great wins, all of them. Where does this one kind of fit in with the mood in the locker room? I mean, I remember last year after Tennessee, that was a bad loss. The Saints game last year, that was an awful loss. So how would you kind of characterize what it was like in there? Can you equate it to another game locker room you've been in?
Honestly, it was different than what I expected to find. It's one of the first things I do when I walk in is just kind of read the body language of the guys in there. And what I saw was not what I expected. I expected to see some fire, some anger, and I've seen that earlier this season with some of the losses. And last night I just kind of saw oh, well, let's just get on the plane and go home kind of mentality. And, they were saying the things they needed to say about being frustrated, about getting embarrassed. But, and they had all game to really understand and accept that the loss had happened because, they were out of it right away. So, but what I saw was a team that just seemed like it didn't have the passion there. Now, they just got owned, and they all knew it. But that to me was what I took away from it. And like I said, not quite what I expected to see.
Almost like a content, almost like we're realizing that we're maybe not as good as we had thought.
That could be part of it. I think some of it, I don't know. I got the opinion that some of these guys, and this might be a little bit too harsh and getting it the wrong way, but it just kind of was what I thought. And I'm just telling you what I thought was some of these guys were like, well, I guess I'll go get my paycheck and head home.
That's pretty damning.
That is,
shouldn't even be allowed to go get the paycheck.
I wonder, Scott. There have been moments where we've talked. Going back to the Lions loss, where I think Jason Kelsey was in the locker room and just did not want to speak to anybody. And then you've got the anonymous thing, and then you've got other losses where guys were just kind of, very frustrated. It seems like, I don't know, if maybe yesterday was kind of a dam-breaking moment for this team.
I'm wondering. I really think it's going to be a defining moment that either sends this team spiraling down to a miserable season or, look, Zach Ertz mentioned it in the interviews you hear on the website. The New Orleans lost last year. Mike, you mentioned that too. And everybody thought at that moment that season was done. And they ended up finding a way to get back into the playoffs. And I'm not trying to put a positive spin on anything today because it's not neat. But, you talk about the players in the locker room, and Malcolm Jenkins is always, and Jeff, you know this, one of the last guys to leave the locker room. Last night, I couldn't. He had bolted out of there so fast, and a lot of the, a lot of the media, you were all looking at each other like, did anybody get Malcolm? No. And you walk over, you look at his locker, and it's cleaned out. He was gone.
Wow.
And that's rare. He is normally one to stand up and take the punches that the media throws in terms of why did you guys do this or what happened here. And in my opinion, I think he's great at doing that. It wasn't anywhere to be found last night. So I think that also says things. Sometimes the biggest statements are made without.
Yeah, that goes to what we're talking about with leadership. Your leaders right now. Fletcher Cox, not only absent on the field, but isn't saying much. Lane Johnson comes out and talks about people being late to meetings and how heads are going to roll. And
Lane Johnson, I got a bone to pick with him because I went into my opinion watching that game was, look, you just got out-coached. You were out-prepared. You didn't seem like you were ready to play that game. And so I went in and was asking guys, did you feel like you saw warning signs in this week in practice? Mm-hmm. I asked Lane that question. No, everything, we thought we had a good game plan together. The typical answer, cliche. He walked outside and tells John Clark, all this stuff about, guys being late for practice and all that stuff. And I'm thinking, what changed in the 5 minutes you were just talking to us? And went out there and decided, no, you know what, I'm letting it hang out. And maybe it was looking around the locker room. Maybe it was looking at some of these other guys. And another one that I got a bone to pick with that I think a lot of people probably do is Nelson Aguilar. I just the one pass play last night, I instantly said in the moment, how do you not lay out for that ball downfield?
Right.
And you could tell, and with this kind of, I guess, insight on if you watch the interview with Nelson on the website, to me, there's a guy just trying to make up a bunch of excuses about why he didn't make the play. He wants to talk about how the ball's trajectory was lower than what he thought. Well, I don't see a guy, and I asked this of Zach Ertz, see everybody on this team giving 110% on every play. And that was the one play in my mind that made me ask the question. And, of course, Ertz isn't going to throw a teammate under a bus, never said, anything otherwise. But that, to me, was a guy who didn't give anything on that play. It was reminiscent of Ricky Waters with alligator arms to me.
Yeah, Pinkston's been throwing it. Also, it feels from an effort standpoint, it's funny that Zach Ertz wouldn't say anything because it feels like how we all felt 3 years ago when Zach Ertz does not put a hit on Vontaze Burfict on that return, right?
True.
And it just feels like it's not even about whether it was catchable or not. It's like whether or not you tried.
Well, and then you got, what was Orlando Scandrick doing other than some sort of a square with Tavon Austin on the opening touchdown? I mean, never even made a decent attempt at trying to stop him. Left his jock straps probably still sitting out at the 20-yard line. You talk, and that goes back to effort that you're talking about, Jeff. I just don't see these guys. And you go back to 2017 and what was working. Well, that locker room was as tight as could be. Everybody fought for each other. You make a mistake, don't worry about it. I'm going to go pick you up. What I see out there right now is everybody playing for themselves. I see everybody who's like, well, that wasn't my mistake, so I'm okay. Not, listen, Orlando, Jalen Mills was getting blocked like crazy by a wide receiver. How you don't break off a wide receiver in 20 yards and be able to keep him from getting in the end zone is also mind-boggling to me. I know you haven't played in a year. Maybe you can argue Jalen Mills was one guy Giffen effort because at least he went out and flopped and got a penalty, and so he's trying to do something. But, the effort, I think, is a big question. I'm real curious to see what this team does this week in practice.
How do you recover from this, Scott? Because now it's 2 straight weeks that are absolutely blown out. You look horrible. National TV against your rival. We all know what happened. It's just to put out the effort last night. We can go through player performances, and this whole conversation has essentially been about leadership and discipline and lack of effort. But I just don't know how they recover from this because the tape just gives you a lot of the answers that you're looking for. It's just they're not a team. The effort isn't there. A lot of finger pointing, a lot of me, and it's just I just feel like we're on the verge of a death dive.
Well, the only way I see a way out of this tailspin is for the players to look around the locker room, the leadership on this team to really hold people accountable some way, somehow, and to go out and make a statement against Buffalo. Because as bad as it was against Dallas, you are only one game behind in the division. The season is not over, no matter what it feels like today. And if you go out and win at Buffalo, I mean, that's a huge win. And you come back home and suddenly it's like, well, all right, maybe they're turning the ship around. I mean, if they lose again to Buffalo, they go 0 for 3 on this road swing. I mean, they come home and they're going to find an unruly, boo-friendly crowd at Blank. and it's just going to set the scene. I don't know. I don't know how you come back from this because that was but then again, I really left New Orleans last year thinking, wow, I don't know how you come back from that because it was awful.
Well, and to be fair, we had talked about last week, even if you lose this game, you're really only one game back. Now, though Dallas has a bye this week, if you were to win, you'd be a half game back and you play Dallas again. And look, we talked about it last week. The loser of that game's season is not changed. Like, your season is not changed because you lost the game. You look bad in games. It happens all the time. Scott's right. After New Orleans of questions and answers and lack of answers and effort and season's over. And so this game's behind them and they're a game back. Like, the season is not over. However, my questions aren't more on the effort and that stuff because, you're going to have nights where you just give bad effort. My question is, do they have the right people in place to fix it? Because now what we're hearing is we have, by the way, report card, F, everybody, F, not an A, B, no C's, D, everybody got an F. But my question is, did the team get a little fat and happy, and is now Doug saying, you show up late to practice, that's okay? Like, is it getting to the point where when you rushed the fraternity, it was really cool, and now you're the head of the fraternity, and you're kind of, this fraternity's not cool anymore. You know what I'm saying? Like, it seems that a bunch of these guys have been around each other for long enough that you feel like you can overstep your boundaries.
Well, I think that there's potentially some of that, and that's where I think the leadership on the team needs to step up and do the hard thing, which is to turn to guys who they've been playing alongside for years and have gotten that kind of chummy with to say, you're not doing your job, and you've got to start doing your job because you're hurting this team. Now, whether or not these guys will do that, I don't know. But I looked out there last night, and I saw one thing that I saw for sure was only one of those two teams is going to the playoffs. There's no way the NFC East is sending two teams as a wild card. So you're really just fighting for the division at this point. And what I saw amongst the team was a defense that has no pressure, has no linebacker help, has no coverage ability. Rasul Douglas got beat up on a double move. I see no way out of it. And I think as I'm talking to you now, I'm thinking that's probably where some of these players were last night in their minds, thinking, I don't see how we get out of this. We just don't have the people. And that's where it's on Howie, and that's where I think it's interesting, the comment that was made anonymously to Josina Anderson shows these guys are frustrated. They want some help, basically because they've lost some key pieces to injury. That tells me they feel they have a good enough team that if they could just get some help to replace a little bit of what was lost, they'd be fine. And Howie has been sitting tight, and I understand not mortgaging the farm in order to get stuff, but your draft picks haven't been A+ either. I mean, look, Derek Barnett is still trying to show himself. He has flashes.
Yeah, by the way, I thought Barnett had maybe the best play of his career last night when he absolutely. I said, "Wow!"
Saw you tweet that.
That was the first. That was the best play that I had seen. I know he had the strip sack in the playoff game, but he beat a legit left tackle last night, and I loved his move. I was like, okay, this is something, but just a lack of consistency with him.
Yeah, and that's been – they're waiting for it. And you can't keep waiting for guys to produce. Now, yeah, okay, Brandon Graham, he was a similar, a late bloomer. Okay, well, you can't keep waiting for stuff to happen when you're not getting any pressure. And, Fletcher Cox finally got to the quarterback last night and forced a fumble, but it was recovered by Dallas. And you look at the draft picks, and to me, I'm saying Howie's not a great drafter. If it takes trading a couple – and again, I ask this question. If you think you can win this division – go make a move or two. But you can't keep waiting for the trade deadline thinking, well, I want to get the best value I can, and if I wait till the last minute, the 11th hour, I can maybe save a draft pick or save an item. Look, in my mind, if somebody wants Nelson Aguilar, trade him. He is not helping this team anymore. I'm done with him. I mean, I don't know. And so if somebody wants that as part of a trade, do it. Get somebody else in here.
Scott Grayson, Grayson's grades are posted. I'll give you the insight. They're all Fs. Find out who got all the Fs. And check out the locker room videos. A lot of telling stuff in there. Great stuff, Scott. And next week, Eagles at Buffalo. By the way, Buffalo's defense is better than both Minnesota's and Dallas's, my opinion. That's a 5-1 team. Pretty good defense up there. So we'll see. The Eagles have their hands full. It doesn't ease up. They got the Bears defense after that. They got the Patriots defense after that. So they better figure some things out. Thanks, pal.
Yeah, you got it, guys. Have a good one.
And Scott Grayson's grades, like all guests, appeared via the Boardwalk on the Hotline.